Hi everyone, welcome to Marketing Rapid Fire episode 15, the last episode of 2020, and going to be a gala end to this year with these four amazing marketers over here. Really excited that you joined us today on this wonderfully chilly, at least in Delhi, Saturday evening. Really excited to kind of share all of our thoughts and learn from each other. I did see in the attendee form that a lot of you are new here. So I'll quickly explain the rules of the game and yeah, let's keep this fun, conversational, and engaging. So, rules of the game are very simple. I have 12 questions for these amazing marketeers. They're going to have to answer each question in under a minute. There is a buzzer that rings. It's pretty fun to see when the buzzer rings. Their faces go completely white, but hopefully they finish their thoughts in a minute or just a little over a minute. We're going to be talking about three segments today. We're going to be having a generic question because a lot of you put in generic questions. We're going to talk about content marketing, and then we're going to talk about influencer marketing and PR. So really excited to have all of you here. Let's get started. So I'd love for all of you to please introduce yourself. Amin, go first, and rest all of you can take it from there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I am Aman. I'm the head of digital for Bolt Audio currently. Before this, I was working as a brand specialist with Red Bull in India, leading all the media initiatives. And coming from an agency background, with working with Harris Media for more than 3 years. That's about it. Thank you so much for having me here.
Awesome. Nice to have you here. Bhagishri?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I am Bhagishree. I am the owner of India's only remote work consultancy called All Remotely, and we are world's leading organization for psychometric testing and remote ready scorecard of employees. Prior to this, I've had multiple stints in B2B marketing, again as a remote team member. So I've been in this industry for 9 years. Pretty much explains what I've been doing. So yeah, that's all about it.
Awesome. Welcome on board. Sakshi?
Sure. Hi everyone, this is Sakshi Unyal. Firstly, thank you for joining on a Saturday, and Vanshika, thank you so much for hosting all of us here. Really excited for this. I'm currently a part of the Bloomberg Quint marketing team. Bloomberg Quint is, a digital news channel. We look at the financial and business news channel in India. Pretty excited for this marketing round, and trust me, the buzzer thing is something which makes me a little at this moment. So yeah.
Let's see how long we go before someone gets the buzzer. Tushar?
Hi, good afternoon, guys. My name is Tushar Mehta. I head expansion and strategies for one of the leading boutique and public relation design firms called Wishbox Studio. I worked with brands like Radisson Hotels and BMW for last 10 years, and my expertise lies in marketing, ATL, BTL, plus creating stories. And again, it's a pleasure, Vanshika. Thank you so much for inviting all of us. And yes, butterflies in the stomach. Really good. Thank you.
It's going to be okay. Don't worry. Everybody says this in the beginning, but once the round starts, I think you'll be all fine. So, Aman, are you ready to get started with the first question?
Let's do this.
It's very nervously like हाँ करते हैं. अब तो show live हो गया, अब तो करना पड़ेगा.
I don't have a choice.
I don't think you have a choice. You signed up for this. Okay, cool. Let's get started. So, like I mentioned, we'll start off with the generic questions. So, this comes from the audience. It's from Parul. She's asking if she has a website and she wants to increase inbound leads. What are some of the strategies that have worked for you to help get inbound and build awareness for the brand?
Okay, so I think when it comes to inbound leads, apart from just media investments to be made, I mean, for all startups, I would recommend that content being the king. Be very heavy on social media, especially Instagram. The CTRs in the past that I've seen is pretty. It's growing tremendously, to be honest. And Instagram is leading ahead of Twitter, ahead of Facebook at the moment. Just keep your content real, keep your content pure, and keep it contextual. I think contextual is the right word because micro moment marketing is something that's going to pick up very soon. I think that should definitely get you a lot of inbound leads. And trust me, there are a lot of brands currently in the market who are leading with that, and they're doing a phenomenal job with the same.
Got it. Awesome. Bhagyashree, do you want to take it?
Sure. I would say, apart from what Aman said, content, I would actually say how you write your web copy. That's particularly important because I've seen a lot of people have written all sorts of fancy, disruptive sort of words. Pretty much doesn't explain. It's actually, I would say, keep it simple, keep it crisp, keep it to the point, in your face kind of a thing. The moment somebody lands on your website, they know what you do, they know what your product is, and that's all that would matter.
Got it. Wonderful. Sakshi?
Yes. Adding on to both of you, two things really play a very major role. A, of course, your brand communication, and second, building your website based on the SEO. Because that is something which will help you identify your consumer behavior. So fix that, figure out how your consumer behaves, what is the exact thing they're looking at, and how do you match it to your website, of course. Secondly, I think the process beyond just the inbound lead. So the moment you get it, I think it's a hot lead, and I think the more quickly you work on it to kind of convert it, or to talk about your brand and service, I think that also plays a very major role. Digital, and of course building it through brand communication plus working on execution, I think will really work well for you.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Tushar?
I feel to some all the points. I also feel client and leadership testimonials play a very key role because how your brand is perceived by your new cold clients in terms of your performances versus your potential pitches really matters a lot. So a word put in by your marquee clients really helps you to build in your camaraderie. That is a first point shot for sure.
Yeah, got it. Totally, totally correct. Awesome. Our next question out to you. This is again from Saurabh. He's saying that marketing always fights for a budget, and that's always a yearly thing that happens. So he's asking, like, how do you kind of come up with the budget? Like, what's your strategy on like giving a realistic number to your board when coming up with that number, be it whatever X number it is. So, tell us on how you build that budget out.
Sure. So I think marketing should always be looked at business first. The budget generally in the past 7 8 years that I've worked, we've always devised the budget out of our last year's earnings. And to give you a marquee figure, I think it should be close to like 5 to 8% of your last year's budget. And of course, if you are a growing brand, definitely more can be allocated accordingly because initially the awareness push is really necessary, and getting the awareness to the consideration phase and then to the purchase funnel, that becomes a task, and the 8% budget might not suffice, but totally at the end it is your business goals that you want to achieve. And at the end, just keep one thing in mind, that barters is something that definitely works. It's not just the influencer or the media person selling his product to you, it's the other way around as well. You being a brand is also very important, and that holds a value. So it's not necessary that you actually invest all the time. There are certain deliverables that you can actually work with in kind as well. So I think that should be the ideal way forward.
Got it. And we also had our first buzzer, but okay, thanks for that. Bhagya, go for it.
So I would say from my experience, because I have not worked with pretty large enterprises, but I worked with remote startups. They were actually looking for growth and scalability rather than continuation. So the budget has always been derived of what your end goals are. What do you want to achieve? Whether you want to start a new customer segment, whether you want to launch another product, or whether you just want to continue with your existing product. I've seen in my experience that when it comes to growth, if somebody just wants to take off their product off the market, marketing would have the major chunk of budget, up to 25% of the last year's revenue. If it comes to continuation, it would go pretty much low. I've seen as low as around 3 4%. But again, I would say it totally depends on what your goals are in terms of marketing.
So I think, I'll pick it up before you kind of ask me to. So I think both of them have actually covered major of the part. But just to add on to it, I think along with your, the funnel of the user funnel, it also depends on the platform you would want to. Do you want to distribute it offline and online? Depending, of course, on the goal. Plus, not all campaigns have a direct ROI. As Amal rightly said, some things also are measured based on what you get in terms of the value proposition. maybe if I'm doing an association, which might not be a part of my budget, but helps me win the brand value I'm looking at. So I think that also plays a major role. But yes, I think a budget should be there, irrespective of what your goal and objectives are, be it below an X amount or be it above an X amount. But I think that is something which is very equally essential and necessary. Also, deciding on platforms before you come up with budget,
Hmm.
is what plays a very major role. And then the last thing which I would want to say is that along with okay. Just make sure that you have a budget in your. I don't want this buzzer to happen again when you so Tushar, please, you can
Go
take
for
it.
it.
Well, I feel to add all these points, market forecasting plays a very key role. Giving you an example, what happened in Wuhan initially, and Marriott was the first property. I'm talking about a narrative of hospitality sector. It was the first brand to cut off their marketing spends when they started
Hmm.
seeing fluctuations in the Chinese market, and that's where they decided to cut down their marketing spends not just in Asia but also in Europe, and it really helped them because they do have furloughed a lot of people, but while they had cut off their marketing spends, it really helped them to grow. So I
Hmm.
feel market forecasting plays a very key role. How you strategize according to different demographics really pumps the rest of your budgeting operation policies.
Got it. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, uh, times were uncertain. So, I mean, if you have to pull budget, marketing is always the first that goes, marketing ka budget le lo, baki sab dekh lenge. That's always the hard reality. All right. Next question out to Aman again. This is from Udlak. He's asking, what is the one thing that new marketers always do wrong? So, if you have a personal story, please feel free to share like a mistake you made in your early days. We would love to know and learn from it.
So a mistake that a marketer makes is I feel okay, every idea is like their own baby, and we just feel that this idea is going to work. So I think one mistake every new marketer makes is that we launch the campaign thinking that it'll work, but we don't have the consumer research or the consumer perspective understood. So that leads to a lot of the campaign going bad or anything wrong that can go. So I believe that I mean that's one rookie mistake that we generally start. Even I've made one in the past, and especially for performance marketing guys, I feel like, and that's again one mistake I made back when I started my career. Performance marketing is something that you have to be very hands-on, and you have to have that insight on all the dashboards on which you're running your ads.
Hmm.
Um, be wary of the daily budget versus the lifetime budget that's there. So do not make a lifetime budget into a daily budget, and you'll end up spending the same amount of money that you're supposed to spend in a month in a day. I've done that in the past. Just be wary of be very in the moment and just understand the brief properly, and just play with the monies very carefully.
Got it. Bhagyashree?
Keywords. We've heard so many people talk about how keywords and SEO is important. We've read so many articles on how keywords are important. We all marketers are crazy for keywords. We keep scouring on the internet for trending keyword, what's not trending, but we often forget that our clients are not keyword savvy. You give them the most trending keywords in the copy. You said you paste all these fancy keywords, but until unless you actually put your message directly across to the client or to the prospective client in a cleaner or a clearer way where they could understand, and then you have to optimize also your website according to the fact that all your clients are not keyword savvy. So let's say if you're just looking, oh, we looking for one particular color. I would give my example, and it was for a grocery store that we were doing a campaign for, and there were dals. You know dals, right? Like lentils, dal, pili dal, and all that. So people kept saying, just write kali dal, kali dal. It doesn't matter kali dal or yellow dal. People were just looking for dal. So move above this being keyword savvy and look at what your prospective clients want, look at what your existing users want, and then you optimize your website or your copy according to it.
Very, very well said and lovely example. Sakshi, go for it.
Sure. So there are two things. We all do competitive analysis, try to identify what our competitors are doing. And, while we are doing that, a lot of brands I've noticed try to copy the same wavelength,
Hmm.
maybe the same idea, try to make it a little converting it into as per their brand. But I think that really doesn't work. What might work for A brand in the same sector might not work for a B brand. So I think as a marketer, of course, do your analysis, see what your competitors are doing. But I think having a out of the box, beyond the edge idea is equally important. Maybe it gives out the same message, but I think a very vanilla copying the same thing because your competitor campaign worked really well, it might not work for you. And secondly, because I had a performance also out here at Bloomberg Quint, I think, adding on to Bhagyashree's, statement of brand communication, I think a basic offer or maybe a vision of my company or maybe, a small campaign or maybe a small talk. I think a clarity is very important as a marketer. So don't forget to do that. I will avoid the bugger for now. Because it always pauses me in between. But yes, these two things are really important. So irrespective of the offer, you're giving her a simple communication about, COVID, that, hey, we want you guys to take care. As a brand, we care for you. I think that
Mhm.
clarity in communication is important. So these two things, definitely.
Very true. Very true. Tushar?
I'll add to it, the competition analysis which Sakshi mentioned is a very critical point for budding marketers. But yes, also to add one critical thing which I also observed in my career when I started working with Radisson Hotels in marketing and PR was always do a proper dipstick about your product and the location and the area that you are promoting your brand into. So, giving you an example, there is a property in Pashchim Vihar, Radisson Blue, and we did a food festival there. It was a Lebanese food festival, and Lebanese food in West Delhi sounds little off
I
by
know.
bar. Yeah.
Definitely,
So,
yeah.
um,
I studied in Delhi.
Oh
yeah. So
God.
we had an expat chef who came in, and his stay and all, he was made the king of the hotel, and the festival bombed. I mean, it didn't work, and ultimately when the general manager asks a director marketing or a marketing manager that we incurred a cost, we didn't had any idea. So yeah, a proper dipstick is very essential.
You
Just so
should have
true.
worked in South Delhi. Agar ye Rajasthan, next to the airport, it would have picked
Oh,
Yeah, it was
different because
only
South
nice
Delhi is
from
like expats area. So would
yeah,
have loved
वेस्ट दिल्ली
living.
में कर दिया आप लोगों ने. Okay, anyway, moving on.
we had a
Next
सरदार जी देर वो
question.
कहते यार की है लेबनीज सानू दाल चिकते बटर चिकन
I know, I know. West Delhi वाले आके बोलेंगे फैंसी के नाम पे भैया sorry if I don't know if there's somebody from West Delhi wherever मैं भी
no
दिल्ली
no
में रहती थी so pretty much one of you guys and they would be like chow mein is like the most continental thing they would
so
Oh
yeah
God.
would have been a
Okay.
humor so yeah but it did happen and it was a lot of embarrassment in the
Yeah, I
initial
would
time.
can imagine. All right, next question out to you. How do you balance paid and organic to give you a ROI you're happy with? Is there really a healthy balance? Like, we hear marketers saying do 70, 30, 60, 40, all of these fancy numbers. But is there something that has really worked for you in terms of balancing it and getting to your goal faster, quicker, and whatever your goal is?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, whenever it comes to organic just doesn't build. Of course, it builds over time, but it won't happen overnight. And if you want to really focus on growing organic, first key is SEO for sure. Moving forward, I think it also depends on how your paid strategy is, because this is an example from Red Bull, which I like. There was we were doing a lot of content marketing, and the entire portal is content led. So choosing the right properties in terms of paid advertising also matters. Just to give you an example, running a regular display banner versus actually running native stories make a lot of a difference in terms of performance. It won't cost you a bomb. It's almost the same CPCs, but they actually help you grow that organic base as well, because it is
Mhm.
targeting the consumer intent. It's targeting the consumer where he is in terms of if he's reading a content, just throw in more content pieces similar to what he might like. I think just targeting consumer behavior on the internet will actually help you grow a lot in terms of your organic.
Got it. Bhagyashree?
Just,
So I've been very focused on organic campaigns right from my starting days at a lot of startups. But we did do some of the paid campaigns, and the first factor that we saw was that paid campaigns across all channels doesn't work. So you have to pick up the right channel to run your paid campaign. Organic, as opposed to paid campaign, will pretty much delivered across all channels to us. But picking out the right channel is again tricky, because then you have to think of the prospective clients. You also have to think of the existing users, because if I am an existing user and I keep seeing the ad of what I'm already using, I may get pissed off. and
Hmm.
and what we often forget is that we don't only have to focus on the prospective clients. There's also an existing user base that we need to think of, we need to take care of, and keep them in mind. So in my limited experience, because I have not worked with a lot of paid campaigns, so this is what we found, and this is what I have the answer as.
Awesome. Right on time. So go for it, Sakshi.
Right. So two things. In traditional world we used to hear right place, right time, right product. I think now it is again changed to right platform and right segmenting when it comes to your paid campaigns. So I think it's equally essential, especially when you're doing, like Aman mentioned, your display campaigns, when you're running on other publishing sites, when you're even using Google AdWords to target your user, across the sites they visit. I think picking up the right site which kind of matches the content of the site to what you're showing. As Bhagashri mentioned, I go to some publishing site and I'm reading something. The display ad, the paid ad which I'm seeing, it doesn't give me any relevance. My CTRs will decrease. I won't click on the banner ad because I am not at that platform looking for that product. But maybe I go to maybe an e-commerce brand, and that's when I see some relevance. It will add to my paid campaign CTRs and my impression. So I think for
Totally.
a marketer, it's really important to pick up the right publishing site, or even in your Google AdWords, the right site you want to target. Organically, I think just adding the last line, I think Instagram, Facebook, that really helps you build your brand organically. So I think first, as a startup, build it organically, and then push in and pump in your money to your paid strategy. I think that will help.
Got it. Tushar?
See, from the organic perspective, I always vouch for an organic public relations campaign for any brand, whether it's a startup, whether it's a corporate, whether it's a lifestyle or a tech brand, because how you pitch into your target media list and how effectively your narrative is. Because at the end of the day, I've been in PR for last 10 years, and I've seen, a journalist who is writing in Forbes will be more compelled to write about the story and the ideas that you're presenting to him or her, rather just doing a mere media buying and talking about your brand. So for me, what really would matter as a marketer is a proper organic cohesive communication strategy which I am able to roll out with a proper PR person on board who is able to get my traction in terms of,
Hmm.
if it's a startup, to all the VCs and the concerned startup decision makers, whether it's a lifestyle or an F&B brand, accordingly how the food critiques are reviewing it. So yes, that would really matter to me, and a PR campaign is what I would really vouch for an organic mandate.
Very good. I like how you guys are all answering it right at the dot. जैसे बजता है आपका आंसर खत्म होता है. Very nice. Awesome. So we'll do one or two more questions and then we'll go on for networking for a little bit. I know people are really excited to meet you guys. So let's just do two more questions and then we'll move on to the networking part. So the next segment is on content and content marketing. So let's start off. Amin, question out to you again. So creation and distribution, right, they go hand in hand with content, and I personally believe like distribution is where the money's at. Like you can have the best piece of content, but if you suck at distributing it, it really doesn't matter. So I wanted to kind of learn from all of you like some strategies that have worked to kind of make it go viral, every marketer's favorite word. So if you can share some campaigns or maybe something you've done where some content piece just completely blew out of proportion for all the good reasons, do give us an insight on that.
So I think, like I said earlier as well, content is the king. Understanding what the consumer wants to see today is very important, and I think that's what even Netflix or Amazon is doing with their original series, right? So
Hmm.
they've identified by Netflix as to what is working the best and making content around the same line. So I mean that's for Netflix and Amazon being the key distributor players, but I feel. I think a lot of Indian OTTs are doing a phenomenal job in terms of expanding their reach and getting the right content. So while these players are doing the right content, they're also able to distribute it properly. So when it comes to distribution, you being a distribution channel doesn't just suffice, because at the end there are competition players distributing better content, or might not be a good content either. So I think it's very important for reaching out and communicating what the uh, the content is saying out. So I think. Oh, sorry.
I
You can finish
actually
your
lost
thought.
track
It's
of the
okay.
question. I actually lost track of the question. Could you repeat? Because I'm
So
very
the
focused on what Aman was saying, and he did bring
yeah,
up some very good
you can finish your thought, Aman. If you were saying something, finish the kar lo.
So I was just saying that I mean, it's the content still remains the key, and when it comes to distribution, I think best medium for distribution today remains Instagram. TikTok was a player which is out. I think Instagram stories and a phenomenal job. Especially the very recent ad that I saw was Caravan. Lagja Gale, the entire ad that they've created is
Yes.
beautiful content. It is phenomenal, targeting to the right audience, and anybody in the right target segment actually relates to that one particular song, right? So I think distribution medium can be multiple. It's just at the end remains what the content has to offer.
Got it. Yeah, very, very exciting and very, yeah, totally. I mean, I totally agree with what you said. Bhagyashree, so the
I saw the smile on
question,
your face. One thing I saw the smile on your face when I mentioned Caravan ad. I think
yeah,
we can relate
I
to it.
saw them. I mean, I keep track of whatever is happening, all these ad campaigns and stuff to just see कि क्या हो रहा है market में. So very
Right.
beautiful ad it was indeed. Bhagyashree, so the question was like creation and distribution, right? Like the money is in the distribution, it's not in the creation. Like create तो कोई भी कर सकता है, but how do you get it to your audience? So wanted to learn some strategies that have worked for you or something you've done that has made the content piece go viral. So whatever's worked for you.
So I would actually take a different angle on this than Aman because he pretty much explained the OTT platforms fairly nicely. I would like to say evoking emotions is absolutely important. However you do that, visual, audio, textual, doesn't matter. But what a lot of people have started doing wrong is that Diwali time pe all those Diwali ads would pop up. Rakhi pe Cadbury would run there. On the celebrations, and then on these national holidays, 26th January, 15th August, all these Hero Honda came up with their own armed forces ads. It is becoming very cliche. People, rather than people appreciating those ads, people are like, yaar, ye to na seasonal ads hai. So, as in terms of content creation, I would really say that people should focus on what people actually want rather than what is the festive season
Hmm.
all about, and stick to that. Distribution is, of course, rightly said that this is where the money lies. How you distribute how you distribute becomes very very important, and I think in today's world, visual, like what Aman said, those short clips, 3 minutes or less, they actually capture, because you have the attention span for 3 minutes. If it goes any longer, then you just lose it and it's not memorable anymore. So visual is actually how people would remember you.
I would totally agree with that. Sakshi, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So I think both of them kind of really highlighted how consumer behavior is important when you
Hmm.
create content. I think on distribution, I would like to touch a little bit. I think understanding different digital platforms also matter. When you go on Facebook, you're there to watch something which is a less than 30-second snippet. But when you go on YouTube, you're dedicatedly giving a nice 10-15 minutes to watch any content which is available. I think as a marketer, I should know that even so, I'll give you an example. We did for Bloomberg Queen something called Pursuits by Skoda. It was again a brand campaign for Skoda India and did really well. So it was a nice 20-minute video where we picked up stories from Blue Tokai or maybe Vagu Ragal, Andhadhun and everything. But the way we distributed is that the whole story went on YouTube because I know that is where somebody would dedicatedly come and watch a 20-minute piece. But on Facebook and Twitter and on LinkedIn for that matter, we created small snippets, like you mentioned, 3 minutes
Hmm.
or less than 2 minutes. So I think while you're creating your beautiful content, I think understanding which platforms, also creating a website, where you can host these contents and direct your users and kind of build an entire campaign out of it
Hmm.
is equally important when it comes to distribution standards.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of brands suck because they just think कि like एक बना दिया मतलब सारे platforms में same distribute करो, but that's not consumer behavior. So yeah, very good point raised. Tushar?
See, from the distribution and consumer behavior perspective, I have a very, I felt a very, an amazing endeavor which was taken care by the MDH Masalas group. You know, Mr. Gulati, he was the face of the brand. He was the brand mascot, and despite leading the company, he knew that yes, he had to set his priorities right. And his content, his ads were very simple. If you see, they were,
Mm,
traditional Indian ads, going in sync with all demographics in India. Whether you're in Punjab, in Kerala, in Kashmir, the gentleman always ensured that not just his visibility on the brand was there, but the brand narrative was coming from his end. He never allowed, himself to get over the brand. And
yeah,
that's where he left his legacy. So I always feel, from the content perspective, when you have a brand that has a legacy, you need to rope in that legacy parallel in terms of your brand narrative, so
mm,
that the common audience can really gel up to it.
yeah, totally. Totally. Finish your thought, please.
Yeah. No, the buzzer gives a
Cool. All right.
And it
Last.
warms you,
Also,
it just breaks you in the between, and you're like, oh,
whether it's a thought
Well,
killer here.
So I was, there was a very, I'll even share, there is a very beautiful article that came on brand equity about MDH group,
mm,
and his entire journey when he started from Sialkot that time, and without anything, and when he started his first shop here in Delhi, it's not about,
mm,
from going from rags to riches, but he had that entrepreneurial vision, and he knew that कि यार I'm not going to let any actor come as a brand ambassador and talk about himself rather about my brand.
true.
And
True.
in fact, he's one of those very rare Indian brand ambassadors who was who was who was not just having a brand acumen, but also knew what he had to correlate with his audiences.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect content strategy for me, that I'm promoting that diversity for my brand.
Got
I
it.
think
Yeah.
another very good example of how Tushar just mentioned. I think we're forgetting Trivago, the ad that they actually
Yeah.
launched. He was a
Yeah.
celebrity. He was one of the employees. He was the growth head at
Yes.
Trivago, and he was the entire ad campaign. So I
Yeah.
think just to add on that.
Yeah.
this
I
insight
mean,
has actually
even
come from.
IZCO has been doing a lot of like internal stuff. Like they've been doing everything internally, which is just crazy. I mean,
Correct.
they're a travel brand, but their marketing is so on point, and it's all mostly in-house. Just it's just
Correct.
amazing to see how they've managed to execute on their marketing.
I
Very
think
well
so.
done.
So is Ixigo as well, right? So if you look at all Ixigo content, they generally like do all the ad shoots, and it's their employees sitting
Yes.
wherever. So I mean,
Yeah.
This was started internationally when Dove, if you remember, long back, they launched the product, and people could not relate because it was these actresses and these
Mm,
models, and they wanted the basic faces, the household faces, and that's when Dove came up with this, no color and no skin ad campaign, where they picked up
yes.
girls from these basic. It was long back, I think 2010 or something, where they said that Dove is all about you and not about maybe an actress, sitting at a place. So I think that is where the whole consumer behavior changed. People wanted to relate to people. Maybe my friend who kind of her skin changed, or maybe my mother who cooks back at home, or my father who loves kitchen. So I think that is now changing how content also is looked upon at.
Right. Yeah, totally. Some really lovely examples here that we've just talked about. So thanks for that, you guys. You guys are awesome. All right, last question. I'll go out to Aman again. Then we'll go for networking, and then we'll come back and move on to the next bunch of questions. So user-generated content, right? It's so underrated, and I'm sure a lot of brands can leverage it, but they're not doing it properly. How do you kind of bring that into your brand story and brand comms so that it doesn't look fake? It still looks nice, and it encourages people to share their story about their brand, and their interaction with your brand. So if you have some tips, or I mean, if you've done something at Bolt, I would love to hear about it.
So I think UGC, while yes, it works the best because no better influencer than the consumer. Word of mouth actually should be the center of the marketing funnel, right? But I believe a lot of brands, and I think I come from my personal experience as well. I feel a lot of brands stay away from getting a lot of user generated content ready is because the quality cannot be filtered out, and
Yeah.
that is where the aesthetics of the brand actually loses, and what the brand is trying to communicate, because it becomes like a Chinese whisper, right? The brand is communicating one thing, but by the end the consumer understands something and his friend would understand something else, and then the chain entirely breaks.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think when it comes to UGC, if you have ample seeding of content happening for for starters, I think that sets the tone right. And when not just your content, your branded content, but consumers doing something and consumers explaining, I think that works really well for all the brands. And definitely go UGC for sure.
Definitely. I mean, I love seeing real faces, right? How much can you
Correct.
push a product? Like, especially, I mean, for you, right? Like, you can't just keep showing headphones, keep products, so the people will get sick of it. You need those faces. And again, like we talked about, not model faces and stuff. We need real people like you and I, like in the metro listening to stuff. So, yeah,
Lifestyle works the best because people want to see the product in which they can relate themselves to, rather than putting it on a pedestal and just showing the product versus
right,
somebody using the product actually makes more sense.
right, right, totally. Bhagyashree, go for it.
So I'll give an example of if you've used WordPress, because see, I come from a purely tech background, not from a consumer background. So my examples would relate to more of tech. WordPress had launched Gutenberg editor, which wasn't meeting the requirements of the fans. And WordPress, if you've seen, they never market their products. They're highly consumer driven brand. They're consumers, they're users, it's an open source community. People who contribute to their community advertise the product themselves, and it's $1 billion company now. So when we were doing that, there was a lot of resistance from people, and I had recently joined Automatic in their community marketing team, and I was tasked to do something about it. And then when I went on their Slack channels, I saw so much of hatred, people finding the editor blocks stuff very difficult than the classic editor. And there was a lot of, and then of course, what I also saw was that some of the people were just relying their opinion on what they had read. Even without using it, they were doing it. But now, quickly coming to what we did was, we and then we ran this campaign where we actually picked up people from these very small tiny shops in Lebanon and in Tunisia and other countries, coffee shops, and they were making their own websites using the new editor. And we saw, and we when we did the shoot, we did not only focus on the right things they got, we also picked up on the wrong things. So they made some error, they made some integration error, they did something wrong. We shot that, and we showed it because we wanted to bring it very real life, that things can go wrong, but things can be fixed. So how you use your stories, how you a lot of people actually do not like user generated content because they think that it's all very tweaked, it's all very forced, it's all very scripted. We went raw with it. So we just gave what was the reality, and people picked from it, and now Gutenberg is one of the most selling editors.
Yeah,
Nice.
awesome story. Sakshi, tell us your story.
Sure. So, we are a publishing, house where we write content. It's a more of an editorial-led content, talking about business and stock market and things. So for us, consumer is the king. We also have a community, a subscription product called BQ Blue. So for us, somebody who is a loyal consumer, someone who's paying to read my content, plays a very major role because he's the one who will influence 10 more people. If my content is something which relates to what he or she needs. So I think at Bloomberg Queen for us it really matters. So right from a basic, a survey which we do for our users on what more kind of articles would you want to read, to having events specifically for my community, which is my BQ Blue subscribers, play a very major role. Also, more of a brand content based side for user generated content. I think a lot of brands try to push the product and service while the consumer is talking about his or her story. I think that is where you go wrong. We want to hear your user, we want to hear your consumer, and not push your brand to the face. So, a subtle integration in your user generated content, which is
Right.
highlighting the emotion of the user, showing that connection to your brand, and making a product or service look like a human. I think back in our books, if you go back, you read that, a product and service is a human. It has a name, it has a color, it has everything. So, I said, bring that while you're creating your user generated content. I think that is something which all of us do back at home.
Awesome. Yeah, totally, totally agree. Tushar, you're muted. Thanks for that. This was like the end of the 2020 episode. और वो कहाँ गई था एक बार? You are muted is like 2020's theme song. Go for it.
It's been really good for me. Yeah. So I have an example. This is this is during my stint with BMW Group, and we had to launch GT. It was a new variant that came in BMW. And then we were contemplating among markets. We decided Dehradun as the market. You know why? Because Dehradun it's a yes. It sounds very weird, but again, Dehradun is why? Because it's the aspirational buyers market. While what you see in North India, Dehradun is certainly one of the most aspirational buyers market. And what we targeted was not an HNI base, someone who can already, who's already using a Beamer or a Merc or an Audi. We decided to tap academicians. We decided to tap, the regular business, profiles there, and an ordinary, guy like me who really wants to drive a Beamer. But yaar, मैं
Mhm.
अभी नहीं ले पाऊंगा. Maybe five years from now or 10 years from now. And we did an experience tour from Dehradun Rajpur Road. If you guys have been to Dehradun,
Yes.
from Rajpur Road to Mussoorie, that was still Library Chalk, and there were around 12 Beamers in a cavalcade being driven by people from different backgrounds. So
Nice.
if you see the level of the I would say the content that that person talks about, कि यार, I drove a Beamer today. Wow, it was one of the best days of my life. It
Right.
really pushed our brand to a next level. Next day
Yeah.
we were everywhere in the media. Our SEO ranking was like anything in North India about GT. So I precisely feel, your aspirational markets should be your key, rather a competition market which your brand or other brands are already following.
Right. Right. Very, very
I
nice
think
insight.
This is actually similar to, I would Mercedes when
Yeah.
they came up when they came up with the new S class model. Ludhiana is called the Mercedes capital of India.
Yes.
Punjab में एक और शहर है, it's called the Audi. Chandigarh is the Audi capital, and BMW भी पंजाब में कोई city है, it's called the capital. And you know what? Those people did was they went with this S class. It was an SUV version, I think, if I'm not wrong. So they went with them. Proper खेतों में गए with tractors and stuff. Like Punjab is synonymous with farmers.
Yeah.
Of Punjab we think of farming, and they got the vehicle all dirty and murky in the mud. And that's how they projected the story, that whether even if you drive a tractor to earn a living, you can still drive a fancy car at night. So,
I
and that
see.
actually struck. A lot of farmers in Punjab have these very expensive luxurious cars.
Absolutely. And
Wow.
I'll add one more thing. The very next day we got a booking of 15 GTs there in
Wow.
Dehradun.
Wow.
I
So
Wow.
think I think just to summarize, I think experience is what sells at the end, right? I think
Right.
absolutely.
that experience,
Totally.
that
Totally.
is
Awesome.
what people are looking for.
Also,
Awesome.
this whole connect with them young strategy, Tushar, I think that is something which really makes a lot of sense, that,
Yeah.
you connect
Yeah.
with them when they're young so that you always stay an aspiration to them. And you're the first buying product or service when they actually have the wallet size to.
Proper mind recall. Yeah. I mean,
We were the
that's
first brand to do an event live in the Doon school, and
wow.
it was like breathtaking. I mean, not just Doon school, people from different schools came in, Willems, Woodstock, all these guys came in. And it was like, that's where I'm trying to tell, the academician perspective really worked for us. When you have those aspirational targets for your brand, which I felt was the necessity, it really, broke the bridges, and it really
Got
worked.
got it. Awesome. All right, let's move on to a quick networking break and then continue on with the questions. Some lovely conversation has already happened. I'm sure there's more on the other side. So let's just break for a quick 5 to 7 minutes, go chat with people, talk to your panelists, talk to the people here. All you have to do is when we go to the networking lounge, all you have to do is hit on a chair on a particular table where you see a speaker, you want to chat with them, please feel free to go ahead. We'll loop around in 5 to 7 minutes. See you on the other side.
See you.
See
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are going to jump into the second segment of Marketing Rapid Fire. This time, we're going to be doing it in the reverse alphabetical order. So, we're going to have Tushar, Sakshi, Bhagya, and then Aman answer questions. So, let's quickly get started and answer the last couple of questions that we have for the panel. All right. So, Tushar, question out to you first. So if you had a new website, right, and you had to build organic SEO using user intent data very well, how would you do it? And this is not for someone experienced at all. This is very newbie level SEO. Like, how would you do it so that SEO and organic works for you?
Okay, so well, for my, a new website, whether it's, let's say, if I am, initiating a startup, my first priority is would be definitely, getting a digital specialist on board who can, not just route in the traction on the website, but also, work on a a bespoke strategy for the brand. Because at times it happens that a CEO or a marketer cannot don all the hats. If I say that I'm a comms expert, I might not be a right expert for driving digital marketing. So yes, for sure, getting a right person on board and understanding the aspirations of the brand in terms of its growth and how the structure lies in, constructing a quarterly calendar. That's what I would really route in, and then taking the target for that quarterly calendar forward.
Got it. Sakshi?
Sure. So, of course, adding to these points, I think it is really important to not put in everything in one basket, and
Hmm.
not amplifying all your strategies at once. You even organically, you need to build a fundamental, as you mentioned, a calendar or a roadmap to grow it organically. Even Google or any, for example, platform for that matter won't pick up your content at the moment you put it. You also need to know what other people in the similar content funnel are doing. What are the words they're using? What my consumers are searching if they're looking for maybe something, at Bloomberg Queen, maybe, a topical news which has come out. I need to figure out what other publishers are using in terms of a basic headline. So when a user is searching, okay, Taj stocks, will stock is something which I will use because then it might show me stocks of multiple stocks. So I need to pick up the right word and not put in strategize it at once. Maybe gradually look at growing it. Will work really well for somebody who's starting it at first. Do your good analysis and then create a clear strategy.
Got it. Bhagishri, go for it.
I would actually add to what Sakshi says are picking up the right keywords. And when we think of SEO, we only think of, so a lot of us only think of on-page SEO. There's off-page and there's technical SEO. And technical SEO is paramount. How Google crawls your website is actually very important
Hmm.
for your ranking. Now, coming back to the regular part of SEO, it's not always about writing what's in trend. So, a lot of people do is they just pick up the trending words and they make an article out of it. Opinions, something that shows the other side of the trend is also important because I'll give you my example. I write a lot about remote work. I started writing about remote work only last year when I realized that India doesn't know about remote work. And while everybody even today is talking about how remote work is the future, I have done my surveys and statistics. I have my stats that say that remote work is not the future for a number of reasons. And I projected this at the beginning of the pandemic, and people were like, are you crazy? This is never going to be the future. But now you see this remote work is not the future. People would want a hybrid space. So it's not always
Right.
talking about what everybody is talking about. It's actually about useful content.
Very interesting. Very interesting point. Aman?
I think it's very difficult for me to be like answering at the last because first because
Sorry,
actually it's not
Yeah,
always
you know what
that
Tushar
really.
felt like.
I know, right? I mean,
So imagine
it's
what me
easier.
and Tushar felt, by the time when paper was done, we were like, okay, now we just have to turn it off and then add some examples and then
Actually,
ये सारे वाइवा के बदले लिए गए हैं.
so, anyways, I think everything has been covered, and I would only say, like, when it comes to, like Bhageshri rightly said, it's not just on-page SEO which everybody focuses on, and off-page SEO is equally important. And actually, I would say that off-page SEO actually holds a 60% share,
yes.
and 40% would actually go to on-page. So, I mean, focus more on off-page SEO, and backlinks would be the key for you to actually grow your website organically when you're just starting it, because the traffic, I think Sakshi rightly said, Google indexing won't happen overnight. It will happen over time, and it will happen once people are there on the website. You grow the traffic there, and that is when Google will start indexing it. How Google indexes it and makes it even better, that's something that happens gradually. But to start with, get the off-page SEO done, get the backlinks right. I think you're good to go.
Awesome, awesome. Tushar, next question out to you again. So there are a lot of marketers who preach like, have an n number of content ideas, how to create a endless content calendar. Like Neil Patel, Gary Vee, all of these guys are like, "Salo ka content, hum kar lenge." Is that really true? Like I struggle with content sometimes. That's why I'm like asking like generally, ki, like, is it really true that you can have endless content ideas, and if you do, how do you kind of use it so that it's actually helpful to your audience and not just stuff that you're putting out?
See, I feel that you cannot have endless content ideas in your head because it's not just about your brand. It is also about a parallel brand that you are growing in yourself when you're talking to your audience.
Hmm.
That most of the marketers, fail to identify that it's not just the business card they're representing. They're also talking about and they're also selling themselves. Whenever I speak to people, I tell them that LinkedIn is not just a recruitment tool, Baba. You are a product and you need to position yourself there.
Hmm.
It's not just about asking for a job. I'm just giving an example. So coming back to it, I always feel that you should always believe in curating bespoke stories about your brand, something which is not just your USP, not just conventionally right, but also differs you not from your competition but from your own internal employees perspective. What a
Hmm.
finance guy sees कि यार ये तो इतना बड़ा bill दे दिया marketing का, shouldn't be there for a marketing guy. It
Yeah.
happens in consumer brands. So I'm just giving an example that there can be endless content strategies, but from my perspective, I feel that there should be a bespoke content strategy that suits your brand. Don't run in random directions.
Got it. Yeah, totally. Sakshi?
Yeah. So, I always say this that, content, people say think out of the box, but as a marketer, you need to draw a box also around your content because some things are practically not possible. Some things might not work the way a content person kind of thinks back in, their head. For example, this market. The rapid fire round which we're doing. I think the differentiating factor plays a very major role where you made people who are actually looking out for marketing opinions, understanding marketing beyond books, could connect to people like us who are out there ready to talk. A lot of other people do that, but again, the content is not as seamless as connecting as possible. So I think as a marketer, you might have thousand content in your mind, but I think learn to draw a box around it. Think, does it fit to your goal, your budget, your platform, and your product and service? And I think that is how you kind of bring your content strategy in play.
Wow, very, very well said. Bhagya?
So I would say think of a content idea as a funnel. So you can put in thousand ideas at the beginning, keep filtering, keep filtering, and then you'll reach at the end of the funnel where you'll find the ideas that actually work for you, and those are the ideas that you should be thinking of. Again, I'll take example of what I do at remote work. I can talk about how you hire remotely, how you onboard remotely. There are like so many things I can talk about, but I stay very focused on the socioeconomic aspect because I've realized that ultimately this is the thing that a lot of people are not talking about. This is the differentiator between my competitors and me. So your content idea needs to be the differentiator. It doesn't need to be a copy. It doesn't need to be something that's viral. It doesn't need to be something that's very commonly available. It needs to be the differentiator.
Very interesting. Aman?
I think, see, while saying there can be endless content ideas, I believe that everything is a content. So tomorrow, Vanchika, if you want to pick up slices from this entire meeting, you'll have n number of content pieces right here, right? It just depends as to how relevant the content is. Does the content speak with the consumer's experience? Does it show the experience?
Hmm.
It also depends, like I've mentioned it earlier as well. Micro moment marketing is something I truly believe in, and catching the consumer in the right zone, in the right phase of their day, in the entire digital journey is very important. And like Bhanu, put all the ideas, but ultimately you'll have something, concrete that suits your brand, suits your product, and suits the platform, and suits the consumer as well. So
So buzzer. Complete your thought if you were saying
No,
something.
thought was good.
Okay, got
I
it.
think,
All
I
right.
just want to add one thing in this, back in my early days, I used to write like, 10 ideas on what I can do. And I think when I actually discussed it with my team, I realized none of the 10 actually made sense or were not practically possible or could not give. I think not being disappointed also is very important. I think Aman said long back that, it is fine to, some things not working after you think. So I think as a marketer, it's okay to come up with 10, 20 content, and it's okay that none of them work as per your team. I think, but you should never stop the process of thinking
Correct.
what my content should be. I think that process should never be stopped.
आइडियाज अपने बेबी की तरह होते हैं सबको पसंद आते हैं
Yeah. Got it. All right. Awesome. Last segment for this show, and then we can again break for networking. Tushar, out to you again. How important is it to give a proper brief to your influencers when you are doing an influencer campaign? And I'll tell you why I asked this, because I did an influencer roundtable a couple of months ago, and the most common complaint they had was that the brands were just so vague कि हमें करना क्या है. So they didn't understand कि what do they do, and because of that, each of them executed it their own way. So how important is it, and how do you kind of make sure you give a good brief when you're doing an influencer campaign?
Okay, so I manage a PR agency, and from an agency side, it becomes quite imperative. So we launched a brand, a lifestyle brand, recently. I'll reveal the details after the call. And it's based out of Singapore, and they established their first boutique store here in Delhi in Saket. And the first priority when we were tapping influencers was the utmost criteria should not just be that we are just inviting them for a tete-a-tete session and some snacks and some Instagram reel. It really fits the market that they are catering to, right?
Hmm.
I mean, not just from a hashtag perspective that they come, they click some photographs and they go back, post some stories. You really have to filter your audience among them, whether and the kind of traction they are getting on their own posts, or
Hmm.
even on so what really matters the most is when you give the brand the brief from the brand, you need to check the traction that they are getting in on dashboard, which you get from Instagram, and take it forward from there. So that's what I really feel, what really misses out.
Got it. Yeah, very interesting. Sakshi?
Sure. So, I think what is important is that micro influencers is also a segment which is growing. These are influencers who would want to connect to brands, and now they want to talk real stories. It's just not about that you're paying them or you're associating, but yes, they also would want to build themselves. So I think micro influencer as a brand, you should look at that segment also. Plus, it's not always about the number of reach that influencer has, but it's also about somebody might have 1.3 million people following them, but are those 1.3 million people your target audience? Do they relate to your brand or your service? Is equally important. Also, something I'll tell you, when we give briefs to influencers, and we say, okay, you can speak whatever you want to, and on the
Hmm.
edit table, we are like, oh God, this is not what I wanted them to speak, or this is not the brand. Oh shit, they spoke about the competitor, and I think that for an editor becomes so tough, or for even a content guy or a marketer to then cut and make it into a bite, and then when a user sees it, it is just out of the box. The user cannot connect the dots. So I think not giving a vague brief that hey, you can talk your heart out. I think a little scripting, a little understanding of, hey, listen, this is what I want, this is what you should avoid, and this is what I want it to be, is very important, and not let it go to the edit table and then decide how do I kind of package it. I think yes.
Totally, totally. Bhagyashree?
We don't work with influencers, but with continuing with the previous example that I gave of automatic, we did not give any brief because we wanted the raw emotions to come out. And what we realized was that when everybody is talking about engagement, we were actually focused on conversions. So when it comes to influencer marketing, just don't think about how many clicks you would get, how many engagement you would get. Think about the conversion, and once you figure out that if a certain influencer is helping you convert, or is helping a user convert, or a prospective client convert, you may want to reach out to them again and again.
Got it. Very interesting. Aman?
So I think when it comes to giving a brief to the influencer, I would divide it. I would divide the brief into two parts. One part should be totally about what the objective of the campaign is and what the thought of the campaign is. I think that should be made very clear in the brief. Now, when it comes to what content should they be producing, I am totally against it because the idea of working with influencers is these influencers are pretty smart these days. They understand marketing better than a lot of us, right? So they know what kind of content works, what kind of content doesn't work. Now, yes, identifying the right influencers to reach the right target segment is very important, but just explain, like I would ideally just explain them what the campaign is all about and what is the brand trying to achieve out of it. The rest remains to them in terms of what content do they want to produce out of it. I think
So like creative freedom, basically.
yes, the
Like
creative.
don't box them up, but like give them the
Correct,
guidelines.
correct.
Right.
Got
These are guidelines, do's and don'ts of sorts, and just I believe like having worked with an agency earlier, I believe a lot of time we tell them what the brand is or what the campaign is. We don't tell them the thought behind the campaign. Till the time you actually communicate the thought behind the campaign, I feel you're killing it. You're killing the entire idea, and trust me, what Sakshi mentioned that अरे यार मतलब what I gave you the
it.
but ये क्या content आ गया है and I've had this similar reaction as to what Sakshi had. अरे यार अब इसका क्या करूं मैं? Right. So I think those such scenarios can be avoided if the thought process is actually explained pretty well as well.
I would also want to add, for example, does the influencer connect to my brand? Maybe
Correct.
I feel that they connect, but
Correct.
sometimes you need to ask them that, hey, this is
Hmm.
what my vision and mission is. Do you feel this works with you? You
Is
know,
he,
Yeah,
is he a consumer? Is he a consumer or not?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Or first it's important for them to kind of go from me at least. I would want them to go and see my page and everything and see that do you relate to my content, or even if I'm a consumer brand, use my personal care products first. See if you actually find any value, and then go and talk about it
hmm.
in whatever manner. I
True.
think that also plays a very important role. Not just
True.
it should not just be a give and take thing in terms of just capital. I think it should be beyond that.
Correct.
True. Very, very interesting point. Tushar, out to you again. Transparency is something, and that a lot of brands are trying to do, and some have done well in brand and comms and PR. How do brands really bring out their authentic and true side? I mean, when people land up in your story and there's always like some brands do it well where they're totally authentic, and some put a filter on top ki, like, oh, now we're in this brand, like, then they change their complete tone of voice. So how do you kind of maintain that consistency, authenticity, and transparency?
See, from the transparency side, it's first of all a very interesting question, Vanshika. From a comms element, if I say, whenever we talk to brands in terms of curating themselves, we talk about pitching their case studies, their
Hmm.
numbers, what has been their exponential growth versus what they were right now. How, let's say, a lot of brands sometimes are little skeptical about sharing their revenue numbers. Then we talk about the growth perspective and the strategies that they have used, and all these points really form a very key narrative when we are pitching a story to the journalist. When he sees a pink paper which is being presented to them, which has a key narrative and an infographic which tells about a brand's growth, the strengths, weaknesses as well. Obviously, it is at the purview of the journalist, but yes, all these things really help you to form a very transparent narrative about your brand, even to an audience. If I read your story and if I get to know about a startup which is talking about cleaning the garbage setup in India, and if I see their numbers, case studies really help. So yes, for me, case studies are a big thumbs up when it talks about the transparency perspective.
Got it. Yeah, Sakshi.
Sure. So, transparency, I think nowadays it is beyond just what my product and service is. We hear of, a lot of companies where employee come out and say the work culture. I think having transparency that, hey, this is how the work culture of my brand is. This is what we do behind the doors. This is what my strategy is. I think that also plays a very crucial role in terms of having a transparency. Also, especially because I'm a very personal care or a FMCG person, even if I'm not from that sector, I think I really relate to it. So I think a lot of brands nowadays, if you remember long back, there was an automobile brand who removed, one of the words called Das Auto, because there was a transparency thing which didn't match to the brand identity. I think while you're changing your strategies, or maybe Fairness brand who kind of recently changed their name, because that was not the transparency they were giving. So I think a holistic 360-degree approach from all departments, as Tushar mentioned, your finance, your HR, your employees, I think that transparency should be maintained. So your content product is right, but I think look beyond just the marketing as a department and maintain that transparency throughout is very crucial.
Got it. Bhagishri?
I think I would just add to what Sakshi says because it's not only about finance or how you work or how your team culture is, how well you take care of your employees and your own failures. One example I would like to give is of Micromax. They came back, and you remember the ad where he actually Rahul Sharma actually speaks of that how he failed. He owned it up, and that actually clicked. Owning up your failures, ensuring that your employees are taken care of. Tata is a brilliant example of this, how well they take care of their employees. They don't even have to talk about it because we know. And it's not only the employees that have spoken to us off channels, but we just know because these examples have come out when Taj Hotel was attacked, how brilliantly the employees stayed back without fearing for their lives and took care of the clients. So it's actually transparency is more about your failures, how you've grown as a brand, how you've grown as a business, and less about what your finances are, how you work, and how your culture is.
Got it. Aman?
So, I mean, picking up from Bhagyashree was saying, talking about work culture, I think the best people to talk about work culture is not the brand, but the employees. Employees being every single employee, I believe, is the brand ambassador for that particular brand, and the brand becomes the reflection of the employees at the end, right? So, having said that, I believe rather than, I mean, being authentic and transparent is super important, super important. And what better to put it out than consumer reviews? I believe putting out the right consumer reviews. So consumer reviews can be of two types. One can be a positive, one can be a negative. Putting out the positive consumer reviews is really important. Not to forget the negative reviews. I think it's very important for the brands to address those negative reviews because
Yes.
ultimately on social media, if I am going today, I have 10 comments out of which three are good and the seven are bad. While another customer comes in, he is reading the three good reviews, but he's also seeing the seven bad reviews. But what shows care from a brand side is that the brand is actually responding to those seven bad reviews and actually making a point that yes, they care. So I think
Totally.
authenticity and transparency definitely, is really crucial these days with the n number of brands that are coming in the industry. How does a consumer differentiate between one versus the other? That is where the experience lies. And I will say experience again and again because I come from an experience marketing background, and experience sells the most. I mean, experience is the key to marketing today.
Lovely, lovely explanation. All right,
I'll give
last
an
question of
example of,
this
sorry.
session.
Yeah.
Sorry, we'll just do the last question, then we can move on to networking and chilling and chitter chatter. So, last question out to you all, Tushar. In PR, they normally say, like, go after where your customer is. I mean, there are n number of channels you can go after when you're doing PR. How do you do it effectively? Like, how do you find, like, X channel, and, how do you go about it? If you can explain that process.
Sure. So, in pandemic, all the brands suffered a heavy budget cost cutting. And when we were talking to brands, we knew this thing for sure that a brand who is more cohesive to print might not be susceptible to a digital media. While digital consumption has increased to, a number which, I mean, which we cannot even have an idea in terms of what it was in 2019. So, we shifted a strategy wherein, we try to give curative stories about digital consumption patterns on different media platforms. Let's say I talk about the Quint or a Ken or a Your Story, how they are not just tapping in, startups, they're also tapping in lifestyle brands like the one which Aman represent. And like Aman, very nicely mentioned about experience marketing, that played a very key role even in, even while we were tapping in on the digital consumption side. So what really matters the most is you have to pick your media very selectively. I can't be tapping a startup until and unless there have been some, award winning stories for them. So yes, consumption versus, the patterns which a brand has set for itself, and your target media list forms the gist of, public relations for me.
Absolutely.
Wow, wonderfully said. This was like, thank you for coming to my TED Talk wala answer.
Yeah, there was my trade.
Wonderful. Sakshi?
Yeah. So, two things play a very important role. I think timing. of putting out what you want to communicate, not sleep over it. So, for example, a basic winning an award, or maybe you see an increase in revenue or any new product launch. I think the right timing to put it up, the moment it is hot, the moment you know that this is where I can bud upon it, I think plays a very important role. Secondly, tropical PR activities. So, for example, during COVID, a lot of brands were not talking about themselves or the product or service, but they were relating to it, that we care about you, or we're there, or this is what we're doing beyond just selling you a product and service. I think that also plays a very beautiful PR activity, where they a basic emailer they shared with their users. Even at Bloomberg Quint, we shared an email to our users saying that we care about you, and we hope you're safe back at home. I think these also come under your PR strategy, where you just look beyond what you're doing, as a brand, but connect to your audience, and your timing plays a very important role, along with, of course, what Tushar mentioned in the entire circle of PR.
Got it. Bhagyashree?
I'll share two examples. I had received a newsletter from one of these leading tech companies in pandemic. The monthly newsletter, which just said, we have no news to share. We've got nothing to share. But I hope you're just okay. If you're not, here's a list of doctors that you can reach out to in your vicinity, because they were tracking us from where we were. So they gave me a list of doctors in my hometown. And that was it. And that struck with me. Even though I was one person who would never open their newsletter, I opened it up, I read it, and I actually wrote back saying that this is what I wanted. I did not want another push as to some subscription off or a new product line. This is what I wanted. And the second thing, I think Reliance has got it very right. Ever since the pandemic struck, when you go to these Reliance Fresh stores, they would give you these masks for free. 2 rupees, 5 rupees mask. A couple of them for free. And this actually caters to those people who may not be, I mean, I know masks are very cheap, but they may, it basically shows, I mean, this is now how I lost track of my thoughts, but they are basically showing up that they care. And I think this as a PR strategy has worked for them, even for Lifebuoy for that matter. If you see those ads, it just says that, it doesn't say Lifebuoy kills 99% germs of coronavirus. It says you wash your hands with any soap, it would
Right.
kill the
Yeah,
worms.
they got a lot of appreciation for that ad.
Yes, I loved it.
Very well. Yeah, very well said. Yeah. Aman?
Can you repeat the question? I mean, there were so many interesting topics being discussed right
So
now.
the question, yeah. So the question was, in PR they say go after where your consumer is, and I had asked, how do you do this effectively? Like, how do you find the channel, and how do you really kind of get to your consumer when you have so many options?
So, I mean, go where the consumer is, I believe. Okay, first of all, I think I would like to mention the impulse marketing, and I think Sakshi mentioned that she comes from FMCG background, and I think she'll be able to relate to it much better. So, going where the consumer is, trade marketing channels being very important, and in the larger scheme of things, we at times end up looking at only tier one as to what we see it. But if you go towards tier two and tier three cities, trade marketing channels are still the key to every single purchase that happens for a brand. Not just that, when you talk about your supermarkets, you talk about your modern trade stores, brands are placing their product in such a way that the impulse buy that happens during the checking out phase, a lot of products is being sold there as well. So if from communication point of view, it's very important for us to understand where and what the consumer is reading. So what is who is my customer, what are his behaviors and habits like, under those habits what will he do. So for a lot of the majority TG currently remains the social media channels, and hence Instagram, becomes the king. But I would beg to differ at with certain age groups or certain consumer sets, because yes, you can find a Red Bull consumer there, you can find a Bolt audio consumer there, you can find a XYZ consumer there, but it's very difficult to get a consumer who's say I'm selling a air purifier to, because that consumer is totally different. In terms of communicating mediums, I believe today the press releases are actually working a lot, because and the reviewers done by reviewers work a lot, because what happens in the entire digital journey, and I'm so sorry I'm taking more than a minute here. I mean,
Go for it.
it's a very good question. And what's happening in the consumer journey today is a lot of buying has shifted to online, and while the hands-on experience while buying the product has changed drastically. Consumers go on YouTube, consumers go on Google and type for the product. The first 10 search results actually help them make the purchase decision at the end. And hence, if the PR is done correctly, if you have good number of listicles happening, the person will automatically, end up reading about your product more and more. And when it comes to reviewers, the consumer wants to listen to somebody else tell their experience before buying, and then comes the comparison video of various products also. So I believe, I mean, trade marketing for tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Tier 2 is still developing, and yes, they're moving towards digital. But for digital mediums, it's the PR, and Google being the biggest search engine in the world is where people are. And
Got
Yeah,
it.
Vanshika,
Uh,
I want to sum this conversation in next 2 minutes. I just have one example which I wanted to give. I'm sorry, I'm just
yeah, sure. No,
jumping.
go for it. Go
So
for it.
we did it's a very interesting campaign which I wanted to share with you, with everyone. In fact, when COVID was at its peak during lockdown, we did a campaign as to why frozen chicken or frozen vegetables are actually fresh. It was a very controversial topic, because a lot of time, we have this myth that frozen foods, especially in our Indian, society, it's not, the right way to eat. Take it fresh, cook it fresh. And what we did is, we didn't rope in any celebrity chefs there. We roped in homemakers clubs there, women who have been talking and knowing about food and poultry, and they started doing live cooking sessions on their Insta handles.
Hmm.
And that's where they started talking about, why, if I'm a meat lover, as to why there is a frozen chicken which is still fresh, or if I'm a vegetarian, why an okra or an eggplant or any vegetable, or which is there and not available in the market but can be procured, is fresh. And that was an instant hit. So I'm just trying to correlate that, you not necessarily go to a top ranked celebrity or someone who is an influencer. Your audience is your target audience, and that really makes the difference.
so
Got it.
I think
Lovely.
I have.
Aman, we're out of time. Aman, we're out of time, so we need to kind of go. But yeah, I mean, it was lovely having all of you here. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us. Lots of insights, and the video for this will be up on YouTube in a couple of days. So if you missed anything, please go ahead and watch it again. And if you liked it, please go and tell us on our LinkedIn page. And please also feel free to connect up with all of us on LinkedIn. So thank you all for joining us on Saturday. Thanks. Have a lovely week and stay safe.
Big,
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you so much.
big shout out goes to Vanshika for hosting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anupama.
Thank
So
you.
much
Take
for
care.
having us here.
Bye.
Yes,
Thank
I think this buzzer won't let us sleep for the next